Welcome to the Esports Business Network podcast. I am Trent Knox, the founder and CEO of Esports Business Network. I'll be the host on this episode of the EBN podcast. EBNP number 59. Our guest is none other than Danny Martin, CEO of Esposure.gg. This episode's a little different than our normal episodes recorded virtually over the internet. This episode was recorded on location at Galveston Island Esports Summit 2021. Danny joined me at the EBN booth, and we talked about his evolution in gaming and esports industry. We talked about the rebranding of Geekletes to Esposure, and we talked about the future of esports. I hope you enjoy.
This is the future. Evolution. This is the future.
We have some audio, and we're going to add some graphics and whatnot. Boom. And got your graphic right there on Esposure right there.
Yes. Let me just
It's an evolution.
right. She told me to take off my what's called last time. Give me just 1 second. My team be on me.
Oh, yeah. So, Danny Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on the show.
Always.
Finally got to connect in person and whatnot.
Mhm.
And been online a few different times in your live streams,
Yep.
and definitely in your community and whatnot. And it's an evolution
It is.
from Geek Leaks now to Esposure.
Yes.
And
for sure.
I think I signed up for the beta for your upcoming online virtual courses and stuff like
Perfect.
that.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that. But before we jump in, talk about the history and how did you get into esports?
Wow. Yeah. So I went to the University of Texas at San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
I was a track runner there.
Okay.
And in between that of running track at practices, I was at the CAF one day, and one of my teammates were like, "Man, my console is broke," and he was pretty down about it, right? So I was just like, "Well, let's try to figure out ways we can get that fixed."
Yeah.
He had two options: either take it back to Microsoft, or find someone that can hood fix it, basically, right? And there's so many YouTube videos out there, but we ended up finding someone that actually had a shop that knew how to fix it. And that was the moment, that was my light bulb moment. I was like, if I can figure out how to fix this by learning from someone, I can actively have this as a business on campus, because I'm sure there's about 200 more Carvies out there, right, that needs their console fixed. And they just don't know what to do or how to go about it. And so I spent a couple months, maybe 6 to 7 months, on campus, asking individuals to, can I take your console from your dorm to go fix it and bring it back safely and not think that I was going to steal it. I had to build confidence in individuals, which helps you build a brand. And, that's the main step for starting your business. And, when someone give me their console, as I start to fix it, or after I learned, and I got the blessing from the individual that taught me, and he was just like, "Hey, you can go on campus. You can run me a lot of business. Do your thing. I'm not going to stop you. You're hungry. I ain't going to stop you." So I just start getting the equipment needed. I put it in my dorm room, and we'll fix consoles. And when someone gives me a console, I'm able to see what game they play, how good they are at their game, how they look when they play that game, how much energy they have, what their community looks like, the accolades. I get all that data. And so I would be like, well, if I wanted to host a tournament, I know exactly who to market to, right? If you gave me a console and had Madden in it, and I knew I had 10 other people that gave me consoles of Madden, I'd go market directly to them, right?
Yeah.
That means that's an easy, organic, authentic marketing effort, right? And then they will go tell their friends, right? So at this point, that allowed me to know tournament organizing is something. I will run tournaments. I'll recognize that, hey, I need help doing these actual tournaments. And at that point, to recognize, how do I create a technology platform that makes it easier for tournament organizers? Because every tournament organizer didn't have that type of data that I had, right? So they needed to make it easier for them. And so I went on this whole, debacle of how do I learn software development? And one of my senior teacher, because I was an entrepreneurship major, she allowed me to run the business and build the business in school, as not so much of a fake business, but she was like, "You got a real business. You better be doing your business plan. You better be learning how to talk to investors master's, you do everything that you would have done a fake business in school, you might as well just do it on your real business. Yeah. And so she was like, man, you're pretty good. You're starting to get understanding of the business components. And after you graduate, I can make some introductions. By the way, school is good for introductions, right? Networking is critical. Your teachers can give you a great spots. And so she ended up allowing me to meet someone that was in Silicon Valley, San Francisco. And at that point, I started to learn how to build a tech startup. Yeah. That's including dev, the software element, but most importantly, managing teams and marketing and understanding and talking to the CFOs and just understanding the critical nature of growing a business, right? Yeah. And that's intense. And so that's what made me feel comfortable about not only creating a technology platform to help tournament organizers, but actively creating the actual company. That's more important than anything for me at this point, because once you create a company, you can actually provide opportunities for other individuals just as much. And so that's employment. That's big. Because ultimately for me, I spent a lot of time not making capital in the esports industry, where it became frustrating because I had people on my back, meaning like my mother or my family, like, what are you doing? You know, like, and the money I would make outside, I would just put it into the company. So every money that I made, like if I worked at another company like Starbucks or Solaski's, that money will go into more equipment or, you know, more marketing. And at that point, I was like, man, I'm just investing. But I had to tell myself, like, that's part of it. You know, you have to invest. You have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in your company. And so ultimately, that gave me the know-how to really say, I want to do this. This is what I truly want to do. If I'm taking my money and putting it in my business, that means I'm passionate about this, right? And so it just gave me the confidence to keep it going and figuring it out, like giving myself no A or, you know, no B option, basically. Is like, if I want to provide opportunities, I got to figure it out. And the industry is moving so fast, but it's still in its infancy. So it's wiggle room to figure it out because everybody is trying to figure it out, right? So in this instance, I just moved back to Dallas and converted my home into an esports facility. A little makeshift. It was a 2,000 square foot space. I got some consoles, put them on a wall, invited individuals to come compete, while at the same time, I was able to learn how to build a technology platform for tournament organizers. And that was the point where I was just like, I would go to investors and be like, hey, I got this great technology platform, you should invest in it. And they'll be like, how many people is using it? And it's like, 10, you know, 30, you know, like, that's not, like, I'm not going to invest in that, you know? And that became like, at one point you'll be like, dang, they don't believe in me, and there's other people to get money before they even start a program or a platform, and then you're like, why is it so hard for me? And it's like, actually, no, like, you need to go out and get users, like, go get users. So I would actively go out and tell individuals, go to conferences like this and be like, you know, here's my platform, you know, tell me what you think, you know, and I eventually use my space as, you know, allowing tournament organizers come into space. And while they're running a tournament, they're using the platform. So they can tell me like what's good about it, what's bad about it. And I can start to really build it around that, right? Around that data, because data is very critical. And then individuals will come in and compete. And that's when I started recognizing like, wow, like, there are some really good competitors. When a tournament organizer goes and brings someone from a different state, they drive there and they're competing with all of their passion. It's like, wow, like even they really are competing inside of this place. And so at that point, I started recognizing that esports is more of an ecosystem. How do I make it better for the tournament organizer? How do I make it better for the gamer? You know, how do I make it for the sponsor and even the investor? Like all of those problems I'm trying to solve at once. And I'm like, ooh, this is a lot. But I know the foundation, I know where I want to go. So it's a foundation that you have to build. And over time, you're starting to recognize like, okay, all right, I know it's going to come together all at once. And I knew that a facility is critical because that's where people can come in and you can learn. Technology is very critical because that's where you can really be able to have individuals on your platform. And then ultimately the community is important. Recognizing what type of communities are there. There's a fighting game community, there's a sports game community, there's a mobile game, and they're all different, right? So if you try to build a technology platform that adheres to all of them, you really don't adhere to any of them, right? Because you're not able to focus in on all of them, especially if you are a small business, you know, founder, you don't really have the resources to build all the functionality for all the different type of games. So you ultimately have to pick one. You have to say, okay, what industry or what community is needing the most. And for me being a sports person, I was like, well, sports, it's really lacking. You see MOBAs, you see League of Legends, you see, even the FGC community, you see how like cool they are, and how engaged they are. And sports games is like, it's kind of like pushed over. And I was like, why? And at that point, I started really researching. I was like, okay, and I figured out like, one, sports games were always 1v1, right? So the market traction is not out there. And then two, individuals who play sport games are typically minorities, right? It's Hispanics, it's African Americans, it's, when you think of FIFA, when you think of Madden, when you think of NBA 2K, it just doesn't have the reach. And also it's United States basis, it's not globally, right? So in this instance, individuals are not as much playing FIFA, Madden on a global perspective. FIFA, yes, it's a little, but it's still that 1v1 element that can kind of stop it from being, and it's hard to put 16 individuals against another 16 or 11 individuals against another 11 individuals, like like football. But you can do that with basketball. You can do a 5v5, and that's when NBA 2K started to release Pro-Am. That was like 2K16, and at that point, I was already like, wow, like what are we gonna do? Like, sports needs team-based, and then voila, 2K16 came out, and at that point, I literally turned the whole facility, my home. I was just like, I'm going to focus on 2K. At this point, it was just like everybody was playing online for 2K for 5v5 Pro-Am, which is 5 individuals competing against another 5 individuals. They were all playing online because there was no spaces geared towards letting them come together. And then at that point, I was like, okay, this is going to be the space. If I do more 2K tournaments, they're going to want to travel because they're going to want to see their individuals that they're competing with. And the energy is higher because it's like, if you have online, battles, or if you have online beefs, you get to come in and be able to like, all right, let's squash this, let's squash this beef on the sticks, right? So that environment became so nice and so energetic because you got 5 individuals competing against another 5. And these individuals are good, right? They've been playing online, so they know each other. They know the meta. They know the game. They know everything. And so at that point, I was just like, I know that this process is going to take a long time because NBA 2K is nowhere near League of Legends. It's nowhere near Counter-Strike. It's nowhere near. But if I can withstand it, I can really add value to the space. And over like 2 years of working with 2K16 and Pro-Am, the NBA 2K League announced that they were going to do a 2K League with the NBA and Take-Two Interactive. And at that point, they were going to offer a $1.2 million prize purse. So guess what? All those players that was coming in and competing, they were like, deuce, Danny, we better go to the 2K League. And I'm just like, dang, at first I'm like, y'all leaving, but at the same time, it's like, wow, this platform helped you guys have the confidence to go to the 2K League. And the area of you guys coming into the space, the 2K League coaches and the GMs were able to see you guys and see you interacting and engaging. That was much more than they would be when they had to draft somebody they've never seen online. They don't know their temperament. They don't know how bad they are, how good they are. They don't know. They just know their skill because they can watch it on stream. But a coach is now feeling comfortable that they can go find you and you can be in one place. They can move you to their hometown for their team, and you can get along with everybody. So at that point, we just started seeing players get drafted. I knew exactly the reason why. And at that point, it was just like, wow. Now we see that the NBA 2K League needs a G League, right? Needs a developmental feeder. So how can we be that the most that we possibly been? From a physical perspective, there are already leagues and tournaments online, MPBA, WR. There were already those tournaments, and they were actively helping so many individuals get active exposure to that of those NBA 2K League teams. And it was like really cool, but there had to be a whole another element because the NBA 2K League was played in person, right? So that whole element of being in person is very critical just as much. And so, especially when it comes down to nervousness, like if you've never played on the stage before, now you're playing on the biggest stage. If somebody gets in your head and you ain't never been in an environment, that can impact you. That can impact your gameplay. So having that experience ahead of time makes it easier for you to handle it when you're on that grand stage. Just like any NBA 2K or any Counter-Strike or any type of environment when it comes down to esports. Having that experience goes a long way because esports is pretty fairly 90% or more are mental, right? So at this point, you got to be able to control your mental. And if somebody can get in front of your mental, then it's your whole game is done, right? So in this instance, we looked at it the opportunity to really impact that specific subset. And we knew that if we can showcase that we can make an impact in this genre of esports, then we can replicate that and start to focus in on different other genres. And so ultimately, when we started to recognize like, wow, like individuals are going pro, but we quickly recognized that everybody is not going pro. So how do we help the individuals who are looking to go pro, and what differentiates them? Just their skill. It's their branding, right? It's the way they carry themselves. So now it's like you have to go find individuals that can help with their social media. You have to find individuals that can help with them being just an overall good person from that perspective. And that means there's other people out there that can be able to have opportunities to build their portfolios around it, right? If you find that someone needs help, you can find a coach that can really help their diet and help their mental acuity. That's an opportunity for that person to build their portfolio so they can go into the industry and say, hey, look how I've changed this person's life. And ultimately, they're going to be able to get more clientele based off of that. So when I look at it from that perspective, I look at it as like, how do you help someone build their portfolio? And ultimately, it's not just one specific game. It's multitude of games. It's the industry in itself. So ultimately, for us, we started to quickly recognize that, you know, as if there's not this quote unquote type of feeder system, like if there's straight to the pro, and then we're starting to think about like, oh, G League is critical, but then the college scene is not there at that time, or the high school definitely not there at that time. How do you start building those metrics to hopefully get to the point to where high schools are offering scholarships, colleges are offering scholarships, and if someone doesn't make it pro, they still have some impact that they can have on the industry. And at that point, that's when we started to recognize, like, we have to literally take ourselves from this little 2,000 square foot space and actually build a larger space. Part of that is that my neighbors were going crazy and they really wanted me out because at 3 o'clock in the morning, people stomping and screaming and and they're like, what you're doing is cool, but hey, man, you got to get out of here. And so I was like, well, this is a perfect, story to say, well, we can go get a bigger space now, it's data, right? And at this point, having a bigger space, we started to recognize, like, we really want to make it community-centric. So where individuals in that particular area could actively walk into a space and say, wow, I see somebody gaming, or I see somebody doing production, or I see somebody, running a tournament or doing music for the actual event. And at that point, that allows the teachers in the area and the actual stakeholders in the community from an economic perspective to say, esports is something to take serious, right? And once you get their support, then at this point you can start to move. You can start growing as a company, because they're going to bring in everyone to make sure that they say, hey, we're supporting esports from a totality perspective. And at that moment, we started to recognize that all the schools in our area, we have Duncanville, Dallas, Cedar Hill, Lancaster, Red Oak, Waxahachie, all these schools didn't have esports programs. So the best way for them to even start is to be able to see it in action. And our space became that hub for them to come in and actually watch it and see it and say, oh, I want to go back to my school and recreate this. And so it gave them a stepping stone. And that's when we recognized, like, education is it for us. It's the best way for us to really make an impact in the schools, to start that conversation with a student saying, I may not go pro, but I can actively help build my esports, my school's esports program, or I can actively be able to compete for my high school or my college program. And that's what makes us us. We're literally just trying to make sure that we give insight and support to the organizations and the programs that are actively looking at impacting this industry by starting a program or that of any type of club or anything like that. And we're just doing that because we can say, hey, we've done it. We feel your pain. We know what it's like. We know the investment. We can show you how to do it. And good luck, basically. And that's the biggest dynamic of growing this industry. So I know that's a really long-winded answer to the start of all of it, but it's purposeful. And we're going to be doing it from the time that, schools start to build out their own sustainable market. We're going to be still here because we're going to be like, hey, if you want to expedite that, if your son or daughter wants to expedite that process, come to us, because we have the connections that can help you go to where you need to go. So we really look at ourselves as like, how do we be that private school? How do we be that private element? Sort of like IMG Academy, right? Like how they have like really good individuals that are supporting them, the best physicians and the best coaches and the best students and the best competitors, the best athletes. And ultimately their goal is to help expedite their way into the league. And for our perspective, it's into the industry. We really want to help individuals say, here's your portfolio. You built this with Esposure, and ultimately here's the connections that Esposure can provide. And for us, our students are actively doing big, large productions from an esports perspective with clients like, Sony Music, eFuse, ESPN, NFL, NBA. So those are connection bases that we have where if somebody works for Esposure, we can say, or they can put on their portfolio that they've done a production for these large entities or they've done some type of support for these large entities. So therefore, if there's a new esports organization that's popping up and they have the resources to be able to hire, then they're like, wow, I'm starting off with the best of the best because look at this person's portfolio. And openly being able to help make those connections is very critical because this industry is growing so fast and it's changing so fast. So at this point right now, we want to make sure that individuals who are looking to get in this space and they have the resources, that they're not, they're not the biggest word. I'm trying to get it off my head. They're not discouraged because they cannot find a pipeline of talent. And that's the biggest scare because we don't want esports to be looked at as this bubble, right? Everybody's excited about it, but there's no money in it or there's no support in it. We really want individuals who are excited about getting in the space because COVID made everybody look at it like, oh, snap, like this is something to pay attention to because everybody's at home and there's esports competitions on ESPN right now, right? So you got investors, partners, sponsors, all kind of people interested in wanting to be a part of this industry, which can help it grow astronomically. But we don't want it to go where I'm interested and I tried it, but it wasn't what I quite. Then the pipeline of talent is the biggest reason why individuals will be like, man, I couldn't even find individuals to want to even help me build my company. That's our goal, is to really be able to provide portfolio experiences for young individuals. So therefore they can make that intersection with that of an entity much more simple and smooth.
That's incredible. Obviously, I'm really familiar with the story and whatnot and the evolution. I didn't hear you talk about the evolution or the rebranding between Geekletes.
Yes,
so talk about that a little bit.
Awesome. So one of the biggest things for us is that when COVID hit, when we were in our facility and COVID hit, we were right before COVID hit, we were already like, okay, we want schools to come in our facility, right? And we want them to have events. We want to do events with schools, with the students. And it was already a huge ask to go to a school and be like, can you bus your students to our space at this time? And some schools were like, yeah, let's go for it. After some time, because esports is a process. And then they finally got to letter of intents. And then COVID hit. And then I started getting calls like, we can't do it. We're not going to be in schools. We can't do it. And I'm just like, I'm totally just all my air out of my lungs, just demoralizing. It's like, oh my gosh, like it's right there. And so we literally had to have a heart-to-heart with our team. And we had to say, how can we really get the type of impact back into the schools? They all have to be virtual. And so we were just like, as a team, we had to build a technology platform. We were literally like, what do we do? What do we do? And we're just like, we have to build our own LMS, right? And we started to search other learning management systems out there. But, by being in the startup scene and understanding the valuability of technology, I'm more of a create your own, right? I'm more of like there's other platforms out there, but if you have the skill sets or if you can figure it out, why not create your own? Because that's value within your company over time. If you can create your own, bring your own users on there, then that's valuable because now you can be able to you can go to a VC, you can go to a corporation, you have more control in your company at that point, right? So you can pivot. So when we built our technology platform from a learning management perspective, we were just like, all right, it's time to go to the schools. And we're just like, well, Geekletes, it's more competitive driven. It's geeking athletes. So at this point, we were really focusing on the competitive scene. But if we really wanted to make it easier to get into the schools, we had to rebrand our whole image and make it more feasible to make it more palatable to educators to be like, okay, they're for educators, they're for education, they're for schools, because we are, but we started in competition, and competition in esports is like, it's different, right? And so for us, we really needed to understand how to market out to our users and our clients, and that's the schools, that's the institutions, that's the organization. So we end up having to actively change our whole branding, which is incredibly hard in itself, because all the content you created, you got to take the logos out. You got to just change you got to figure out how to create another logo. You got to do so many different things, your whole branding structure. So I literally was just like, this is going to be a hard task with trying to figure out how to, get, we can't do any events in our space. So we got to think about how to start to make capital or make rent at that point. So I ended up having to bring in a chief marketing officer. Her name is Erin Bailey. She worked in the energy industry for several years, high C-suite type of individual. And I knew that she understood marketing and branding because she's done it with Chevron and some of the bigger companies. So I said, we was at an event one day and she was like, Danny, like literally, COVID is like impacted everybody. And she was just like, unfortunately, I had just been furloughed, but Danny, I've been interested in esports. Like, this is the time. I really want to figure out some other thing. You got me for about, like 4 to 5 months. So use me as much as you possibly can, because I am going to go back. But if we can figure out how to make this work, you got me for 4 months. And I was like, the first thing, she's like, what do you need me to do? Rebrand. Like, we need a full rebrand of our company, because here's our tech platform. On one side, our devs are building. On the other side, I'm interacting with the schools and understanding how the right programs, like really learning it. And on the other side, we need marketing. We need to really be able to change our structure. And so she took on that and she did an amazing job. It was so fluid to where people were just like, are you guys two companies now? Like, did you guys have Geekletes and Esposure? And we were just like, no, actually, we transitioned everything from all content to all media to all social to everything, right? That is one of the hardest tasks I've ever experienced with a company. And we did it in about a month and a half. And at that point, that's when I recognized, like, wow, this is for her. She now gets to say that she rebranded from a marketing perspective an esports entity, and she can put that on her portfolio. So therefore, if she wanted to go for any, I hope she don't leave us, but at any point, she can go and work with some of the largest esports organizations and say, look what I did for Geekletes that is now Esposure, and ultimately she can go and leverage that. And that's what we're about, right? That's exactly what we're about. We want individuals to feel like they can go for larger organizations, because this is how you get into the industry. You have to start with a portfolio, and that's going to help you just build and progress inside of the space. And who knows, you may be working for one of the largest esports or gaming organizations in the world. That can be Tencent, that can be Riot, that can be Blizzard, that can be any entity. But ultimately, we just really want to help you build a portfolio so you can progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm picking up games so much from what you're talking about, because you pretty much integrated into a lot of different stuff. You met a lot of people. Yeah. And so I hear the experience, a lot of the story that you're telling. For sure. And so I want to ask you about the rebranding process. Yeah. Do you think that that's incredibly important in this space? Because there are a lot of teams that are struggling with their branding. And so what do you advise going through that process for those that are thinking about it, about rebranding to be more marketable? Yeah, you have to just be open and honest with yourself, right? A lot of individuals, with Geekletes, I lived and breathed Geekletes. Geekletes, I had, maybe to be completely honest, I had about 10 shirts, only 10 shirts. And it was Geekletes shirts. It had a G. Like, that's all was in my closet. Yeah. So every day that I wake up, I had Geekletes. I was just passionate. But the players that were coming through, supremely passionate when it comes down to Geekletes. So I had to really sit back when our team started to say, man, we need to change our name. I get it, Danny. They were kind of timid because they're like, how do we go tell this guy that we need to go change, And for me, it wasn't that hard that they thought it was going to be, because I was just like, it's needed, At the end of the day, it's a name. It was a legacy that's there, but we have to move. We have to go forward. And I can't be sitting over here mad and, bitter about what was created
that was part of the journey, and we have a new journey now, right? Same mold, the same person, the same entity, the same inspiration, the same passion behind it. But ultimately, we know now that we have a different target, and that target is education. And ultimately, we want to impact the educational system, specifically as they're going through this crazy change when it comes down to virtual learning. We need to make it easier for them. And I'm for the students, I'm for the people, I'm for the industry, and it's not about me. So just trying to keep Geekletes is like, that will be the most selfish thing ever. So I tell individuals and entities, is like, you got to be willing to let go and understanding the purposeful impact that your brand can have and at your target. Yeah. If you know who your target is, you have to be able to say, all right, cool. We have to meet our target. If your target is young individuals, your target is older individuals, you have to guide your brand to meet that target, because it's not about you. It's about the actual end consumer and making them feel comfortable. So therefore they can find that your product or your service is helping them. Because that's what at the end of the day is, your product or service helping another person get to where they need to go. Yeah. If your product or service is only helping you, then it's not going to be feasible, right? And if you are looking at it yourself in the mirror and saying your product or service is only helping you make yourself look good, at this point, like, you need to be open with yourself, and you may need to have a rebrand, right? You may need to change your brand. And if you're a solo person, I understand it, right? Yeah. If you're trying to build a company, you got to let that go out. You got to let that go out the window. Because at the end of the day, it's about your team and it's about the consumers that you're impacting with your product and service. So the first advice is literally being able to understand that it's bigger than yourself, and it's about your consumers, and it's about the actual individuals who are developing from the use of your product or service. And I think that's the first thing that you should be able to think about. And then the next thing is hiring the appropriate talent to actually execute it, right? There's no way that I would have been able to do this launch, rebrand myself. No way. So ultimately, I couldn't expect, if our platform is helping younger individuals come into the scene, again, I couldn't expect, if I can't do it, I can't really train someone else to be able to do it. We have to have somebody that's in the space doing it or outside of the space. And that's a great way for individuals who have tenured backgrounds to come into the space, because it's reality that, yes, it's younger individuals and this is a young industry. But that expertise, that skill that's outside of esports and gaming is extremement beneficial. Just like when we tell the younger individuals, your skills that you learn in esports are transferable to other industries just as much. You may not even, your tournament organizing or your graphic or your podcasting, you may not be in the industry of gaming and esports, but what you've done in gaming and esports may be great for another industry. And that's why I say that esports is a great hub for individuals that have trainer backgrounds just as much, because that was that decision that I had to make. Like, this is too big of a challenge right now to think of. I got to go bring in somebody from high school or somebody from, not to say they can't do it, but the expertise is critical for someone who's actively been at it at a high level. And I'd rather bring in that individual. Now, the next question is, how do you pay somebody for somebody who's been in that tournament? It's almost like, all right, they're expecting $150 or $200 or $300 or even $400,000, salary. You really, unless you have those resources, you really got to provide a really good use case for that person to say, I believe in you and I want to help you, right? Which means at the end of the day, it's going to help them just as much, right? So they're looking at it as like, it's a mutual beneficial partnership. They're helping us because we need it, and at the same sense, we're helping them. And that can mitigate the amount of crazy expense it would be to bring in somebody that's loaded when it comes down to their expertise, and they know they can go to a job and is comfortable at $200,000, $400,000 per year.
So that piece is still lingering in my head, and whatnot. So the question that you brought up, your family earlier, and so what skills and mindset did you inherit from your family? Have you always been super shrewd business guy?
Yeah,
like super high energy.
Yeah, like my family, specifically my mother, she she has always been business oriented due to the fact that she's a woman in tech, right?
Okay, yeah.
So in this instance, she was that person where she had a skill, but she had to go through a lot of craziness to be able to validate her intelligence or her experience with a particular programming language or software platform or so. And so for her, it was like always battling specifically with men, right? Because technology is a male dominated industry. And so and I would always just hear stories for her. So she ended up having to have just this crazy thick, intense skin where I was always like to her, like, it's always business for you, right? She really couldn't be able to like set it down because her life was all like, when she wakes up in the morning, she got to go fight, right? She got to fight for her position.
Family business and personal business.
Family, like, exactly. So it's both of those elements, right? And so it's like, at the end of the day, I just seen strength. Yeah. And I looked at myself as like, if my mother can do it, I can do it. And then I was always like, the skill sets I learned from her, she was always like, I don't quite know what you're doing in gaming and esports, but you know, like, I see you're really passionate about it, you know? And so my goal all the time is like professional athletes, they always say like, I'm going to buy my mom a house and she's going to be like, my goal was like, I'm going to retire my mother from work she's doing and she's going to come work for me, right? It took some time, but it was one moment when she called me and she was like, Danny, I'm traveling all the time, I'm quite ready to change. I think I really want to come and help. Yeah. And by my mom being a tech person and understanding how to manage dev teams, that's perfect for us because we have a tech company, right? So in this instance, she can take that breath off of me to really manage the dev team and get the technology platform and get the schemas and any type of functionality that we need to add. She can run that team because she's been doing it, right? So when she said, I really want to come on and I'll help, I was just like, are you serious? You about to stop your work, you know? Mm-hmm. And she couldn't really retire because she was a consultant. So she had her own business and she didn't have like benefits. So in this instance, it was just like, well, I'm gonna stop consulting and I'm finna come over here. And at that point I was just like, wow, like my mom has to answer to me now. You know, like, oh snap, like what is this gonna be? And even at that point, it's hard because you got your mother as your CTO and co-founder, and she still is mother bear, right? So when she wants to lay down a law, it's almost like one moment I got to be like, yes, ma'am. And the other moment I got to be like, no, you know, like that's not going to fly. This is not the company. Like we have to move, you know? And that has always been a challenge, but it's been the best challenge because I know my mom is going to be vocal, right? When you have a company, some individuals are scared to be vocal, right? I know for a fact my mom is going to be vocal, right? So if she's feeling something, she's going to say it. Yeah. Sometimes I got to tell you, you can't say it at this point, you know, like tell it to me later, you know, but she's going to be vocal. And I can always trust that type of insight. She's not always right. She's not always wrong at this point, but I can trust it. I can trust it's on her mind. And at that point, it keeps me aware of everybody else. And I can also utilize that to be like, hey, everybody else, you should be vocal, right? Don't hold it in, be vocal. Sometimes our team is too vocal, right? But at the same sense, I want them to be vocal. I would rather for them to be too vocal than not vocal enough, right? Because when it's time to change, it's time to change. Right, and life, and especially this industry, moves so fast. And if you can't change, then you're going to get left behind. So the biggest dynamic is there's somebody on our team as diverse as our team. There's somebody that's going to be seeing something that's very critical to the way the world and the way the industry is moving. And I have to be able to allow them to be vocal enough to share it. And ultimately, when they right or when they're wrong, I have to acknowledge it. Good job when you're right. Hey, when you're wrong, look what it affects, right? Don't be scared of being wrong, but also understand the impacts, because I have to make decisions every single day. And one decision I can make can be wrong. I can say something wrong on this podcast right now, and it can affect our team, right? So I'm always very aware of, you know, the responsibility that one has to run a company, but also to, you know, be a part of a company, and I want that to be showcased inside of our team as well. I want them to be vocal.
Absolutely, and there's a different competitive aspect to this side of the business,
Yes.
right? And there's ways to put points on the board, and I'm good at alley-oops, but I was going to bring this up a little bit earlier because you kind of touched on it, but the diversity and inclusion aspect, talk about that a little bit.
For sure. It's been kind of easier for me because I'm African American, and in this space, you don't really see it that often on a founder, on a CEO founder perspective, right? And I think at this level, I have just found it easier to bring in, because I've come from an area that it was economically challenged, the southern sector of Dallas. I just find it easier for me to give a leg up because I know the actual experiences and some of the constraints that one may have, specifically getting not only into this industry, but into many different industries, right? So in this instance, I'm very critical on being able to be that leg up for someone. And I look at it as, if I can build an esports facility in the southern sector of Dallas, which is highly minority, I can build one anywhere in the world, right? It's like what Jay-Z says about, like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere in the world. That's how I feel. But ultimately, I also know the viability of a company that's really diverse as well. So I look at it as, if I can have a company that's mainly geared toward, if I can have a company that's really diverse, but really geared towards individuals that are diverse in the background from an ethnic perspective, I know for a fact, and if I can help them also feel comfortable where someone who's not minority, they feel comfortable about coming into the company and they still can add what they love and their impact, I feel it's like that's a win. That's a win, because now it tells the world that you don't necessarily have to be scared of a minority company, but ultimately you can actually impact, but that minority company giving them the confidence that they can work in a world that's mainly not minority. I literally look at it as, that's something that that's part of I have to do that. I have to show the world that a company could be minority, mostly minority, and still succeed, but also not to the point to where it alienates everybody else. I don't want everybody to be like, they don't like other people. Like, I'm actually in an area that is highly minority, just like if I was in an affluent area that wasn't minority, most of the individuals in that company will look like the area in which they're from. I actively look at it as, I want individuals to feel invited to come. I want them to feel like it's okay to come in areas that are mainly minority, and the economic resources may not be there. I want people to feel like they can come and help and support, but also be a part of a dope company, a company that has a good product and a good service. Not the greatest product or the greatest service, but that's part of our journey. We're going to get better and better and better. But I want people to feel comfortable that they know they can come in and help us get to be great, right? And that doesn't mean that that person has to be minority. That person can be whatever entity, wherever geographic location. But most importantly, I can really speak the minority tone and language that can make someone feel as if like they can actively be a part of this company if they are minority, and they can be heard, they can be respected, and they can actually get a leg up into the space. And ultimately, if there's not too many other platforms that are out there, I'd rather be that platform for them to get into the space.
Wow. I'm picking it. I'm like trying to piece it. There's so much there.
There's so much,
and it's really, this is advanced. This is like high level stuff here. And so I guess I don't want to take too much more of your time.
I got you.
But talk about the funding process a little bit.
Ooh,
How did you get through funding? How did you get through funding the rebrand?
Yeah, for sure.
We talked about it a little bit, but
that's a
supremely
good conversation. Kudos for even bringing this up, because it needs to be very transparent. One of the biggest focal points for me was running tournaments and running leagues. When I was in college, it was always like $60, $40. That's how I make capital. I'm always just like sales, because that's how you can survive, right? Esports is a little different. Like, it's more like nonprofit based. It's more like get in and it's free. Like, your services are it's free for the world. Like,
the regulated.
Yeah,
portion,
it's like, hey, your services are like, here, this is what I like. I'm gonna give it to you. But I think in order to really make this industry grow, you have to put a dollar amount to your products and services, right? You have to really be able to go, when you go source for sponsors, you're going to have to say, here's the value of my podcast, and this is why you should give me X amount of dollars, right? And so I always looked at it as product service, like product service oriented. It's always like focusing on how do you create a product and a service that someone would feel comfortable paying for. And so that was always tournaments, right? Tournaments at the beginning, fixing consoles, and you make capital off the tournaments by entry fees, and then ultimately the engagement of the actual event, you can solidify sponsors for that particular event. And so ultimately, when I started to think about the actual building from a technological perspective, technology is very critical. You have to have a CTO, you have to have a UI UX designer, you have to have somebody that knows front end, you have to know somebody that knows the back end. So ultimately, starting off, when you're building a tech company, I had to go find an actual co-founder that was more geared towards, the UI front end. And ultimately, I had to be in a position where I have to give up equity of the company because I didn't have the capital to pay someone the $100,000 or $200,000. So I had to really get shrewd on business. I don't know if shrewd the right way, informed on business to be able to say, hey, here's the value. Here's what I want to provide. Could you help me? And here's the amount of valuation. Here's the amount of equity I can give you within the company. For some people, that's like, cool, like, let's build this together. Some individuals may want equity plus money, right? I was fortunate enough to have a partner that was wanting to just be able to have equity. And at that point, I was just like, all right, let's go build. And that helped me mitigate the cost from an actual technological perspective, right? Then when we actually got in the facility was more geared towards that of, I had to find an actual dilapidated facility that would nobody use for like over 5 years. And I had to go to the person that owned the property, like, hey, this property look like horrible crap. If I come into this space, if I build it all out, if I fix it, if I paint the walls, the dents, get the roaches and rats out of the space, like, can I use the space to help build my company? Now, granted, at this point, I cannot fund, the company is not able to fund this huge amount of rent, but over time, that gives us a good platform. So that person, again, had to believe in me, right? And when an individual say people don't believe in you, is really by way of how you can convince individuals. Like the name of the game, communication. Like, here's where I'm at. Here's you gonna help me? No. All right, I'm going to the next person. All right, and that's what I had to naturally do. Is just go to people, to be like, if you're gonna help me, this is what I have. If you don't, it's okay. I'm not tripping. I know that I have to knock on doors all the time, and that's just part of the game. And somebody's gonna say yes, right? And as you get many no's, you get better at perfecting your pitch, like when somebody say no, you're like, what did I do wrong? All right, I gotta say this, I gotta do this, and at that point, that was another hurdle that I was able to overcome without a lot of money, the space. And then when it came down to building an actual technology platform from an educational perspective,
can I ask you a question before? Was that for sale by owner, that first facility? Yeah,
that was actually a lease. That was actually that was a rent. Sorry, it was a rent.
Was the owner directly owned?
He owned it. Yeah, he owned it like straight off.
So, leased by owner.
Yeah, it was it was the owner owned the whole property, owned the whole shopping area, by cab, like owned it, right? Yeah. So in this instance, he was more like,
he was the decision maker.
He was the decision maker, so he can be able to make the decisions, like you stated. Yeah. So it was easier for him. It was more like an investment for him. Yeah, it's like, hey, I got this property, I'm paying on it. It ain't nobody used it. Go for it, And I would just hold your hand. If you need something, just let me know, but don't make it cost me a lot. Because at this point, it ain't helping me, right? So that was the overall goal from it. The hard part is COVID hit. So at this point, it was more like, all right, we can't even be in the building. So it's not a value to him for the building. So ultimately, it came out to a perspective of like, all right, you're going to be in this building, or I'm going to bring in somebody else. So it's at this point, I was just like, well, we're actually building a technology platform and our programs are more virtual. So we really don't need the building. Like at this point, it's like, we don't need it. We don't need this huge building. Nobody's going to be in it. And we're more of a tech company by anything. But we still need somewhere where our team can be, right? Where our staff members and everything. So we may not need a huge facility, but we need a smaller space. Yeah. And at that point, when we created the tech platform, we start getting revenue. You know, as soon as COVID is like, when we go into schools need it all across. So we now getting revenue.
Right.
We're able to also utilize our services for production and technology services, production, virtual production. So that's revenue for us. So it allowed us to start to be able to make those key decisions. Like now we're, selling production services for $2,500, and we grew up to $35,000 and $7,500, and we got up to $25,000 and $65,000. So it's like, wow, like we're growing, and our tech platform is growing as well. So that gave us the bandwidth to now go into a smaller building and be like, oh, we got the revenue to justify, this building now. So now it's not like so much of a help. It's more of like what's your price? Now we're going in like, all right, do we like this building for this rent? Do we like this building for this rent? We're able to make better decisions because we had the ability to go virtual and actually scale from a global perspective. And now we're able to say, all right, we don't need a huge space. We can actually maximize our dollars by having a smaller. Now in our new space, it's more room. It's only 8,000 square feet versus a 15,000 square feet. But that 8,000 now, based off the learning, is maximized, right? It's 8,000 where I'm able to have the team, while at the same time I'm having to have a portion for the entertainment aspect. And it's a huge opportunity for the students to come in and get the whole experience of us in a smaller, more efficient area.
Yeah, absolutely. So the process of putting together all the things that you've done right now, we talked about this diversity and inclusion. So we talked about the local aspect. Then we talked a little bit about the national, but I'm gonna skip it.
Yeah.
So for the international component, now that you're virtual and now you have folks contacting you from around the world, how are you figuring out the communication and how to
I get where you're going.
People?
That's real, because then you start to think about, how do I bring in someone that can really help that, right? That's where we're at right now. We're literally like, if we want to go and experience a school that's in London, how do we talk their talk? I have to find somebody who has that experience, right? If we want to go, like we're in Ghana, like just where we had our team for esports event in Ghana, we had to actively talk to Ghanese, individuals that are from that area and people who are from Africa to really understand what some of their pain points. Do they play on console versus mobile? Why? What is the infrastructure? And that took, I would say a good year of conversations before we felt comfortable and be like, all right, let's go out there. Let's go see it from our eyes. We heard so much. Now it's time to go make true impact. That process takes a long time, and you have to have somebody dedicated on that process. For me, it was me dedicated towards talking to Quasi, talking to Sayo, talking to them. And now I'm like, okay, that was a long process. I can't do this again. Like I can't, if we're growing fast, I can't go talk to everybody simultaneously from different areas of the world, because they all need the same thing. So now I have to go bring in someone that can specialize on it. And that's what I was starting to see now, like eFuse. They bring in a international program director. I think that's the right term that they utilized. And it was Lance Mudd. And I was like, wow, companies now that we've seen grow up, like I've seen eFuse grow even before they got their investment, and just to see how now they're starting to think about they need someone from an international perspective that can go out and have these conversations. It inspires me to be like, okay, we need somebody like that too, And then that's how you grow your team. You grow your team and you can be able to impact further. So it's when you look at it, the potential reach that's out there, it's out there, but you have to have the right individuals to really go out there and be able to champion your product, your service in the best way possible, because I can do it, but I would ultimately get stretched super thin to where I'm not as impactful anymore, because I'm trying to balance so much. And that's another thing as you look at it from an actual CEO or founder.
It's a level of respect.
It's a man. It's like you just got to have that, I know that someone else can be able to do this much better. Confidence, and understand that, let them go. And let me be here to be like, you could have did this right, or you could have, then that puts you more in an educator role, like more of like just a support figure for individuals. And that's how I look at my team, is like, I'm here, I can see everything. And I'm just here to be able to say, hey, you know, you could do this better, or you did that great.
Yeah.
But most importantly, you know, you should be the best at what you do, but you're still a human though, you know, and I may just give my perspective, you know, and if I recognize that you are taking it for granted and you're not consistently growing as everybody else on the team. If I have one person on my team growing and I see someone else, because we're a small startup still, it's visible. It's not like it's a huge company where it's 13,000 or 100,000 people. It's 22 of us, you know. We all get to see what everybody's doing because it directly affects. When somebody does something, it affects the next team, right? So in this instance, I'm more of like, hey, you know, we got to be on it because it affects this team. And if I can recognize that you're not on it, like you don't care about it, then that's the quickest identifier for me to be like, you're forcing me to go have to replace or find someone that can really be able to take on that rim.
Yeah, people only have so much of a vantage point, and it's good for you. You've adopted a lot of players around your squad that are able to see it, different perspectives, like the rebranding aspect and whatnot. And what's interesting about that is that you have found out how you can be a leader from where you are as a CEO
for sure
to now bring other people on board. Then you can review their game footage and then say, hey, this is how you can improve your game. Right. That's the way the process actually is best ran. Now that doesn't work for everybody.
It doesn't,
you know, because egos are big in this industry.
It is,
right? So and you know, it's having a certain type of personality in order to, especially in a CEO role like you, is to be like, okay, now where do I need to humble? Where do I need to look? Oh, now I hear about that rebranding. I need to go through that process. Right? And so now we talk about the international component and whatnot. What are some of the big highlights that are upcoming?
Wow. Some of the largest highlights is being able to have comfortability of being here and everybody else out. Like, you know, like Ghana and our team in Denver was a huge thing for me. Okay. It's a huge thing for me because I was just like, I have to be here at the space to make sure all the stuff that the space is running well, because I'm learning construction and all, like interacting with like, that's a whole nother beast, you know? And I'm basically like,
infrastructure.
It's a whole infrastructure. I won't say nightmare because I've learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
And especially if we're looking to do multiple facilities, I'm like, I know what not to do, but it takes a whole nother mind state. So much where it was actually affecting our company because I was like trying to balance all that. And it's not so much where if you don't have the resources, I can't just go get a GC or get somebody to look over all of it. I was in a position where it's like, I had to do it. And because I knew that I know what to do. I know how to build a facility. I know every crevice of it. So in this instance, it's just smarter for me to be here. But I also have the ability where, you know, we got teams going, you know, traveling to other places. And in my mind, I'm just like thinking like, I hope 10 individuals make it on the plane on time, you know? like, did they all make it on time? While they're there, did they do a good job, you know? Was the client happy, you know? Like, I'm thinking about all those elements. And then when it all transpires, when it all comes, when they all get back, I'm looking at like, oh, okay, it didn't go crazy, you know? It wasn't a whole fire. Because, like, I tell individuals, like, my staff is 75% under 25, right? So they're still developing themselves, right? They're still developing as professionals. So they still have elements where you're like, you knucklehead, like, you're like, what do you do that for, you know? But they are all developing. And it's like when you have that moment where everybody is all traveling and doing dope stuff, you're at home and you're just like, whew. I'm trusting everybody goes out and do what they need to do. And when they come back and you're like, wow, like now I'm more comfortable with different areas and different vibes and different things going on. And that just lets you know that you're growing, you know, that lets you know that you're growing as an organization. And so I'm comfortable being in that zone now. I'm kind of comfortable. I'm learning because it's still fairly new. But I know now that the team takes this serious. This is not just a job for them. This is, hey, this is our opportunity. And this is our time to be able to showcase what we do so we can get more opportunities. Because when we lose opportunity, it affects us. It affects us internally. And I think our team knows that. So at this point, it's like everybody has it on their perspective of like, we don't want to be the side that misses the opportunity because it'll affect everybody. So everybody goes out with their best foot forward, and we're able to have honest dialogue to say, this is where we messed up. Let's get better, right? Sometimes I have to have meetings where I'm like intense as heck. Sometimes I'm on meetings where I'm like, good job, y'all. Y'all did a dope thing. Yeah. And it's just that every week. it's part of the journey of our entity. And that's why I love our team so much. And I love this, I love this industry so much because it's just about how you adapt.
Absolutely. And so we're going to close it up here. Talking about the team. Yeah. How can people get connected with you and how can they find out more about the Esposure?
Yeah. Best way is to utilize LinkedIn. Yeah. Find me and Danny Martin on LinkedIn. That's a very critical. Not only are you able to reach out to me, but you're able to reach out to our community as well. Yeah. Like you're able to see what's transpiring, what's going on in the space. But ultimately you're able to like learn about the space. And then you can go to esposure.gg. Esposure.gg will be the best way for you to learn all the things that we do. We do a lot. So it'll be the best way for you to be able to learn about all our services. One of the coolest things that I'm supremely proud for that I haven't even been able to talk about on this space is our Immersion E2E esports program. And what we've learned in this space is when we built our technology platform for a learning management system perspective, we created so much content, and the students that were going through the content and have assessments, they were like, what's next? This industry has like shown that it's on certificates, right? It's shown like, hey, we want more than just certificates. And so we had to come together again as a team to actually create an immersive experience for the students that went through our program that is like, let's get some little bit more out of this. And so we created a 4-week program that allows students for the first week to log onto our technology platform, learn management, marketing, technology, competition, and production, have assessments. But on the second week, the students are broken up into groups of 5. They assume the roles of a manager, general manager, a head coach, a marketing specialist, a production technician, and a software developer. And we've built functionality in our technology platform that allows them to get their assignments done. So ultimately, we give the actual team a salary cap of $1,300, and they are to draft the real athletes in our esports leagues and tournaments. We run a league and tournament concurrently with the program. So therefore, the students actively have 20 athletes that they can be able to pick from to represent their team. We want these students to feel as if like they're running their own esports organization, right? Because that's actively what that's the industry is run off of companies supporting esports organizations, right? Your FaZe clans, your community, your complexities, and all even the AAA teams and even the amateur teams that are out there. We need to know how to run an esports organization, and our program provides that. So ultimately on that 3rd week, the students are general manager. They're overlooking all the roles, the marketing specialist. They're utilizing our functionality to create posts on our technology platform to showcase their new team logo and then also their actual marketing strategy. The software developer, we created a micro website builder on our platform that allows them to be able to take content from the production technician. All the clips of the players that they drafted, those 60-minute clips that they can pull from Twitch of the competitors competing within our facility, they can give that to the software developer and actively be able to build a website to showcase their results, their team results. In every environment, every role that these students have, they're literally collaborating with each other. So therefore, by the end of the actual 4-week experience, they can go to their portfolio, they can go to their teacher, their admin, their parent, or even their prospective employer and say, hey, look what I've done. This is our team. This is my collaboration. This is my team members. Here's also the results of me drafting the player, drafting the team of the players, and here's how their performance is, and here's the data that was tracked from that. They got it all on the website, and now they can go and say, here, look what I've done. And that would make an employer excited because actively in this industry, we don't have a lot of capital. So we got to make sure everything is very efficient. And I would rather see someone that's excited and passionate and they've actually done something in this space. And then I can say, hey, you can help us grow.
Absolutely. Thank you, Danny.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. We're going to go to intermission here real quick, but thank you for coming on the show.
This is awesome. Kudos to what you're doing, man. It's so beautiful.
Hey all, it's Trent Knox. I wanted to let you know that I use Anchor to produce and distribute the EBN podcast. If you've never heard of Anchor FM before, it's the easiest way to start a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Hey y'all, it's Trent Knox, founder and CEO of Esports Business Network. I want to say thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're finding value in the podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you share the podcast to your network and write a positive review on your preferred podcast platform. If you're feeling extra generous, feel free to make a contribution to our working capital accounts on Cash App or PayPal. Our username is ESPORTSBIZNET. That's Esports BizNet on both platforms. As always, we'd love for you to join our community and platform at https://www.ebn.gg. You can take advantage of a free subscription to our Bronze membership by following the directions on the homepage. Part of the Bronze membership is access to our Discord server and private membership channels. The conversation only evolves with participation from esports entrepreneurs like yourself. We need to hear about your esports business to understand how we can move the industry forward as a community. You can also join the community by joining the Facebook and LinkedIn groups. An additional goal of EBN is to move the conversation forward on your preferred social media platform. So as a last note, don't forget to follow us on social media for current events, news, and other esports related topics. Follow and subscribe to Esports Business Network on social media. Looking forward to networking with you very soon.